Hello friends, welcome to Ecoholics YouTube channel. My name is Avinash Agarwal and in this video I'll be discussing with you economics current affairs for 7th November 2024. I've selected two articles from the Mint newspaper for our discussion. First article looks at what are the challenges, economic challenges possible for the world as well as for the United States economy with respect to the Trump presidency 2.0. So as you all might be aware that Donald Trump has won a historical mandate in the United States of America and is set to return back for his second term as the President of the United States of America. So there have been a lot of discussion around the kind of economic policies that will be adopted. Trump himself has given a detailed insight into what he thinks about tariffs, taxes, and so on and so forth. So let's discuss quickly as to what's going to be the impact. Second article will speak about regionally imbalanced development in India, and we will be taking a very sharp focus on the state of Bihar, right? So that will be, I think, the third or fourth article in the same theme on regionally unbalanced development. It's a very important topic that is getting discussed in the press. I just want to make sure that you all as students of economics have a complete understanding of that topic. Hence, I've again picked up that article for discussion with you guys, right? So if there is any questions, any doubts, please ask in the live chat itself. I'll be more than happy to address your questions and doubts, right? So let us start. So see, the important, I'll just be discussing the important points over here, right? The idea is that Trump has promised to levy an import duty of 60% on shipments from China, right? So definitely, this is something which he has talked about again and again. And he has also mentioned a couple of times that there will be an import duty of 10 to 20% across the board. Now, if this is something which he actually acts upon, it will again bring the world very close to trade war kind of situations, right? So between 2017 and 2020, right? So there were a couple of questions that were asked on trade wars. I would really advise you to go and revisit those questions that were asked on trade war. Revisit the questions that were asked during this 2017 to 20 period by various examinations conducted by UPSC, because a very similar kind of scenario is something you would expect. When the man is the same, ideas are the same, outcomes will not be very different. It's just as simple as that. Okay. So if you do actually raise import duty from China, so China is not going to just sit back and relax, right? As it is, the Chinese were looking forward to, having Donald Trump as a president. So why would Chinese favor Donald Trump as a president, knowing that he will be leaving an import duty of 60%? So they wanted Donald Trump as president because they know what he will do. They know how to handle him. They know how to respond, right? So China will start creating factories in ASEAN. They will start creating factories in Mexico. They will start routing their material into America through a variety of different countries, right? So it's not as if that they are just going to sit back and not do anything about it, right? They know how to respond. But the problem over here is that the moment you raise the import duty to 10 by 10%, 20%, 60%, etc., right? It would lower the economic growth for the entire world. It would lower the level of trade for the entire world, right? So this is one aspect. Secondly, Donald Trump has often called climate change as hoax. He doesn't believe in climate change. He believes that the entire research on climate change is just a hogwash. It's all lies, right? On the other hand, Joe Biden's administration, it took a lot of initiatives, green initiatives, etc. Right? What happens to those green initiatives? Only time will tell. Electric mobility is also a green initiative. Elon Musk is heavily invested in electric mobility. So I don't think that electric mobility will be disturbed, is what this article is also saying. But apart from that, I don't think that Donald Trump is a very big fan of any green initiatives whatsoever. We have this conference of parties happening in November in Baku, around in on 22nd of November, if I'm not wrong. So within 10 days, we will be getting a better idea as to what Donald Trump's ideas are so far as climate change is concerned, so far as climate finance is concerned, so far as helping out developing countries is concerned. I don't know if you all have been watching these lectures regularly, but only yesterday we discussed that developing countries need literally trillions of dollars every year to be able to combat against climate change. So within 10 days, we'll come to know what Donald Trump thinks about, you know, putting his share into the trillion dollars, right? So we'll come to know. Apart from that, another aspect, so far as the foreign policy is concerned, is that Trump believes that world should take care of itself, which means that Taiwan should protect itself, right? And all these countries which are around Russia or around Iran, they should take care of themselves. Europe, etc., should pay for their defense. They should not rely too much on America. So countries should basically take care of themselves. US will take care of itself, right? Now, if this happens, so that means that, like I mentioned, that Europe has to be better prepared to deal with an aggressive Russia. Japan and South Korea have to be better prepared to deal with an aggressive North Korea or a China. So that means that these countries will start developing their own arms and armaments at a much more aggressive pace than they have done in the past, right? So that basically means that a lot of money which could have been spent on other pursuits will get diverted towards the defense industry, right? So that is something which is likely to happen going ahead. Apart from this, spending on arms will increase or may increase, and like I discussed, that because of tariffs, because of trade wars, a weaker economic growth will hit living standards. So you have diversion of money towards arms and armaments, and at the same time, because of weaker economic growth, you may have poor living standards. These are all projections, guys. These are all educated projections, right? Based on everything that Trump has enunciated himself over the years. Apart from that, what will happen to the US economy, particularly to US inflation? So if you impose a steep import tariff, so that means that raw materials, intermediate goods, and finished products entering into the US will become expensive, right? So you can expect a higher degree of inflation in the United States of America than what already exists, right? So US voters were very unhappy with Joe Biden because of the price rise that was happening across the states. This is likely to not go away if these kinds of measures are implemented. For example, immigration is a major issue for Trump, and he's very much likely to at least try to stop low skilled immigration into the US. So the relatively cheap labor that is available for production purposes will not be available, right? So if the labor market does actually become tighter in the US, wages do get pushed up in the same because of this measure. So the cost of production will increase because cheap labor is not available. So the labor that is available is expensive, and given the fact that there is a shortage of labor, there may be a shortage of labor, and you want to make America great again, so you want to have maximum production in America, so wages are likely to go up, right? So prices can increase because of that as well. Simultaneously, Trump has been a very vocal advocate of tax cuts. So if he does actually manage to get the tax cut, which I'm sure he will be able to do because of the kind of mandate that he has received and the Republican Party has received, whether it is the Senate or is the House. So if they do actually reduce the taxes, right? So definitely there will be more money chasing goods that are available. So prices can increase because of that as well, right? So the point over here is that these lower tax rates will mean that American government will have to increase its fiscal deficit. They will have to borrow more because lowering the tax rate, it is projected that lowering the tax rate will mean a huge revenue loss for the government of the United States of America. Now, if their borrowing requirement goes up, they start borrowing more, right? So if they start borrowing more, what will be the impact on interest rates? What will be the impact on yield curve? All that remains to be seen, but it is likely to go up. And if the inflation goes up in the United States economy, right? So the US Fed will also increase the interest rate to control that inflation. Mostly, I mean that's what the normal response is, unless and until the Federal Reserve is also controlled by Trump and he manages to keep the interest rate low even while the inflation is up. We don't know, but if the interest rate does manage to go up, that means that countries such as India will also be impacted because we will also have to keep our interest rates at a decent level so that that money doesn't fly out of India. And there will be, because if money flies out of India because of attractive interest rate in the US, then that would be bad. So we don't know how this will play out, right? But these are all possibilities that are getting discussed over here, right? So in the last presidency, Trump had taken fiscal deficit to 25% of the GDP in United States. So India's fiscal deficit is around 5% of the GDP, and we feel that it is high. We are trying to control it. Trump had taken it to 25% of the GDP, and it was not bothered by it, right? So this deficit-driven excess demand is also going to be a source of inflation in the United States of America, right? So the idea over here is that these are all the possible economic fallouts or challenges that the world may face because of the Trump presidency 2.0, right? Speaking very quickly about international relations, so the idea is that he has always mentioned that he will get the Ukraine war ended in one day after he is elected. So probably by today or tomorrow, we will have the war ended. And there is only one way of ending the war, probably. That's by telling Ukraine that, look, we are not there for you anymore. You are on your own. So you better do a handshake with Russia, otherwise it's up to you. So US will basically pressurize Ukraine to cede territory to Russia, accept the status quo and finish the war because we are not there for you. Regarding Gaza, we don't know what will happen. When it comes to India's relations with US, whichever is the president, whoever is the president, whether it was Trump or Biden or Harris or Obama, we are well placed because American think tanks, American strategists, they look at China as their strategic rival. China as somebody who will be contending with them. And to ensure that China doesn't, feel pinched, so they are going to support India to become a counterbalance against China globally in a variety of different ways, right? So therefore, India is well placed because governments after governments, presidents after presidents have looked upon India quite favorably in the last 20-25 years. Regarding our H-1B visas, so Elon Musk has been a big votary for allowing highly skilled migrants to come into America and start working in America, work in the tech industry and so on. So if Elon Musk has any kind of impact on Trump's policies, so migration to America for highly skilled Indians should not be a problem, right? So these are the various possibilities or various things that we will look at, and of course we'll be discussing this again and again. So this is just the start. So I hope that you have some clarity as to what will be the possible economic impact of Trump presidency 2.0 through this discussion. We'll get an opportunity to have greater insights, greater clarity in just a matter of few weeks. Moving to my next article. It's a very beautiful article. It's a very, very beautiful article written by Prachi Mishra, who herself is a very renowned economist in India. It's about Bihar and how it can escape its sub-Saharan India status, right? In the recent past, we have discussed about BUB, right? That how Bihar, Uttar Pradesh and Bengal are important, that we have to have fast growth of manufacturing in these states for us to be able to meet our manufacturing targets. Before that, we have discussed about Uttar Pradesh on a standalone basis, that what are the problems? Why is it that Uttar Pradesh is lagging behind? So these are very important articles because regionally imbalanced development is a major challenge for India, right? So the idea over here is that despite the fact that independence downwards, we have spoken about regionally balanced development. It has been a stated agenda of the government, despite the fact that finance commissions and planning commissions have given generous transfers, right, to ensure regionally balanced development. Why is it that Bihar is having such a low per capita income that we are saying that it's almost as bad as a sub-Saharan African country's conditions are? right? So what are those numbers? We need to understand those numbers. I'll be quickly cutting the unnecessary part out of this and focusing on what I need to focus on, right? See, the idea is that we want to strictly speak about Bihar in this particular article and nothing else, right? So Bihar's per capita income, it's higher than Sierra Leone, Malawi, and Niger in sub-Saharan Africa. It is as low as Liberia, which is one of the poorest and the most difficult countries in sub-Saharan Africa, right? Why is it that we have had such an unbalanced development across regions in India? What is the reason? And let's not blame Britishers about this, right? That okay, colonization was the reason. Yes, colonization was the reason, but apart from that, what went wrong? Which is where I say that this article is very beautiful. So there was something called as freight equalization scheme. You may not have heard of it, right? What was the freight equalization scheme? It was launched in 1952. The idea was that we wanted to bring about even, balanced industrial development across India. So essentially, we subsidized long distance transport of key inputs. So I'm sure that you are aware that key inputs such as iron ore, right? So they were available only in certain states in India. Eastern states in India were mineral rich states, right? So we wanted to ensure that all these inputs, iron and steel, etc., they are available across India. So we launched this freight equalization scheme with the idea that we want to subsidize long distance transport of these key minerals, these key inputs. So it became possible, viable to extract these minerals out of eastern India, to extract these minerals out of Bihar. Remember that Bihar earlier was Bihar plus Jharkhand, and Jharkhand is the most mineral rich area of the country. So it became cheap and possible to extract minerals out of this region and take it to far off regions because of subsidized long distance transport, right? So undivided Bihar was a very resource rich state until 2000. Research has been done by various folks that suggests that this freight equalization scheme has contributed to the decline of industry in eastern India. It pushed iron and steel using industries towards more prosperous states because you want to establish industry either where your access to raw material is there or where the access to consumer is there. Now, given the fact that this freight equalization scheme allowed the movement, subsidized movement of minerals and steel, etc., so the producer industry, the consumer industry, etc., moved closer to the markets in prosperous states. So industries moved out of these regions, right? So there was a location shift, right, in the processing of basic ferrous material, as the result of which processing was not happening in these areas. Only mining was happening in these areas. So your resource rich states, they suffered under the freight equalization scheme and they never fully recovered. This is something extremely new, right? You don't get this very easily, and which is where the beauty of this article is. Next point is fairly straightforward. I'm sure that if you have read books, you would know it. If you have not, I will tell you. So Green Revolution, it solved India's hunger problems. It solved India's food security problems. But Green Revolution completely bypassed Eastern India. Green Revolution का most benefit was concentrated in Punjab, in Haryana, in Western Uttar Pradesh, in certain areas in South India. But by and large, it bypassed Eastern India completely. Right? So you didn't get the benefit at all of Green Revolution if you are a Bihari farmer. Right? Putting some numbers to make you understand the extent of the problem. Bihar has 9% of India's population but contributes less than 2% of India's GDP. Point number one. Point number two. Bihar's per capita income is rupees 60,000, comparable to that of Liberia, one of the poorest countries in Africa. Point number three. Poverty headcount ratio is the highest in Bihar. Point number four. If you look at the population in Bihar, it's increasing at a rapid clip. The fertility rate in Bihar is 2.98, much higher than the replacement rate of 2.1. So population will continue to increase, right? Unemployment rate, point number 5, is 13%. It is thrice the national unemployment rate of 4%. If you look at the younger population in Bihar, the unemployment rate is as high as 31%, thrice the national level rate of 10%, right? Bihar's higher gross higher education enrollment ratio is very low, only 14.5%. Bihar's learning scores are some of the lowest in the country, right? These statistics are very bad. These statistics are very bad, particularly because at one point of time, Patna University was considered to be a very, very strong institution. It had a rich history of education, high aspirations, right? And I'm sure that people wanted to do well within the state, right? If you look at the worker participation rate for women, that is in low single digits, right? That is in low single digits. It's very low, right? So whether it is economic indicators or social indicators, it's very clear that Bihar is lagging behind hugely. How much time will it take to catch up? So if things continue as it is in Bihar and in other parts of the country, so it will take 61 years for Bihar, right, to catch up with half of all India average, and it will take 318 years for Bihar to catch up with Gujarat. These numbers are not so important. What is important is that it will take a huge amount of time for Bihar to catch up if things continue on an as is basis, right? Now we need an economic plan, we need a strategy, right? So I've explained the problem to you, I've explained the root cause of the problem to you, right? Strategy is something that we need to discuss, right? I'm sure that someday we will come across an article that will also be heavily tilted towards the solution, because the problem is well discussed, problem is well understood. These were my two articles today. I hope that you have learned something new, right? With this, we can bring this session to an end. We'll meet tomorrow again and we'll take it ahead. Thank you so much. All the best and Jai Hind to all of you. Bye bye.